Welcome, everybody. This is Hugh Massie, the founder and CEO of DNA Behaviour International. And today I'm delighted to be hosting another identity conversation. And I've got Tony Steuer with me, who's based out in California. So welcome, Tony.
Hi, Hugh. Thanks for having me on today.
And Tony is the Chief Content Officer and Financial Education Officer at Paperwork, which is a newer company in a very interesting space. And Tony has a great passion for financial literacy. So Tony, why don't you just tell me a little bit about your life background, career background, and how you got to this place today?
All right. Well, thanks, Hugh. So I started out like everybody's dream is I went into the insurance business. So yeah, I don't think anybody actually dreams of going in the insurance business. So I started off selling life insurance. And over the course of that time, I discovered that there was a fee-based insurance consultant license, and I pursued that license, and I started doing fee-based insurance consulting. As a result of that, I got to see sort of behind the scenes of what other people in the field were doing. And it got me really thinking about consumer advocacy and education, that oftentimes there was a mismatch between what people thought they were getting and what they were actually getting. And a lot of it was caused by education, is consumers weren't fully educated on what they were buying. They didn't know the right questions to ask. And oftentimes people in the insurance industry also didn't know the right way to present products. And so that led me to doing some litigation consulting. I consulted mainly for wealth management firms. Then I served for 10 years on the California Department of Insurance Curriculum Board, where we oversaw education and licensing requirements for producers in the state of California. And that got me thinking more about the whole financial literacy and education component, is that really a lot of market conduct issues came down to a lack of education, a lack of communication, more so than malice. Of course, there are some bad actors out there, but that a lot of it was that just a gap. And so I became, I started writing books and becoming more active as an advocate. And a couple of years ago, I decided to retire from being a consultant and work full-time on education and advocacy work. And as part of that, I ended up with Paperwork this year, heading up their financial education initiatives, but also to continue as a financial literacy thought leader and to promote financial literacy and financial education.
So Tony, did something happen? Was there a life experience or something happen that made you go to the consumer advocacy side of the insurance business? Because that's something that's pretty deep for you, because when I listen to your career path, that's very central to everything that you've done.
Yeah, I think it's when I started reviewing other insurance agents and their work, is quite often with wealth management advisors. As I was called in, they'd say, my client has 5 whole life insurance policies. What are they? Does my client still need them? And what do we do? And a lot of my work was actually undoing other agents' work. And so as part of that, I started really thinking that people needed an advocate to help them understand the insurance products, that people were buying what the insurance company sold, what the agent sold, rather than buying what they need. And that's a core issue that I've been trying to, instill Paperwork. And what I'm excited about is that the financial services industry spends so much time telling people what they need rather than asking them what they want. And that was the transition that I made, is when I realized that people people in the insurance industry weren't asking people what they want and taking care of their wants. They were just selling a particular product to them.
And it's probably unfortunate that a lot of clients or just the consumer out there don't really even know what they want. That's a big head start, even if they know what they want. So a lot of the financial literacy work, I suppose, that you do is to help the consumer understand what they want and therefore what they should be asking for or saying no to.
100% is, my goal is for consumers to become empowered to make those decisions for themselves. Is I'm not concentrating as much, of course, in my educational work is the standard things like, compounding interest, how a whole life insurance policy works, what a mutual fund is, but it's more so to get to that very first part of like, okay, well, what are your goals? What are your objectives? What are you trying to accomplish? And really working from there and saying, okay, well, there's different ways to do that, but you have to really get familiar. And as I like to say, is that people should spend as much time searching for a mutual fund as they do searching for a new television.
Yeah.
Put some time into it.
Yeah, it's amazing, how big the topic of money is, and people don't want to put any time into it, into properly understanding it or what it means in their life. But they're happy to have long conversations at home and maybe complain here and there, but to actually do the hard work with it, most people don't want to do it, or they're frightened to do it. Some just don't want to invest the time, but it's a very important thing to get right. And I'm like you, a lot of, just to share, my life purpose is about helping people become self-empowered. And that's why I went down the behavioral path, because I wanted people to understand who they were. If they could do that, then they'd become more self-empowered. But of course, there's more steps to that to become fully financially literate. But to me, that was a key step. But Tony, in helping people with their financial literacy, becoming more self-empowered, information helps, and understanding what you want helps. We should be asking for. What do you see as your key standout talent? What's your secret sauce in there from how you make that happen?
Well, I think what I've been told my superpower is that I help to make complex issues simple to understand, is to basically translate the financial services industry into a way that anybody can understand. And, I think, my basic philosophy when I was selling is I wanted somebody to be satisfied in terms of what I explained to them, that they would then be able to explain it to somebody else. That's when I knew I had a good job, is when they understood it well enough that they could then in turn explain it to somebody else, and the explanation actually made sense to that next person. And for me, that's the goal, is that I want people to understand it on such a level that they can actually process it and rephrase it in their own words.
And how do you get people to do that? Because that's quite masterful to be able to do that. That is a superpower in its own right. So what have you done to get people to be able to do that in this, what is a complex area?
Well, I started with life insurance, and I kind of stumbled on it. Like the word stumble is actually 100% accurate, is that it's really part of it is just spelling it out and breaking things down, and then, using terms and analogies that people can understand or that they're used to, is to make things relative instead of trying to get people to just understand the definitions that we use in the financial services world. It's helping them to understand the concept. And that's where, I'm just so intrigued by the work that you do, is because it's psychological. People understand that a life insurance policy pays a death benefit if somebody passes away. That's what they're interested in. Everything else is just a detail that they need to learn. They need to learn which type of product is best for them and so forth, but they're interested in the concept. And then you can break it down to the concept of, well, do you want it for X number of years? That's a question that somebody can understand instead of saying, do you want 10-year term or do you want whole life insurance? That's not a question that people can understand, but they can understand, I want insurance for the rest of my life. And then you say, well, like you have with your behavior reports is, well, are you interested in having it risk-free or do you want it fully guaranteed? The more guarantees you get, the more money it's going to cost you. And it's still achieving, at the end, it's still achieving the same goal where I'll say it's a whole life policy and it does this, that, and the other thing. But it's the asking the questions in a way that people can relate to it and say, okay, that's something I can understand. So it's breaking it down into language that people speak, not words that are unfathomable.
Yeah, I think that's one of the great benefits of financial DNA, which you completed, and we'll talk about yours in a minute. But I think for anyone listening to our conversation, that's one of the big benefits of financial DNA is that it tells you a client starting point. For me, if I'm going to buy an insurance policy, I'm probably more interested in goals and the investment returns. Whereas if I took my brother, for example, who's opposite to me, he's a doctor, it's going to be more, not that all doctors are the same, but he is much more cautious and would be wanting to know where's the capital guarantee in there, where's the security blanket on that event happening or incapacity happening. And so the way which you would ask him questions and me would be polar opposite to get understanding and acceptance and then ultimately an adoption of the strategy. So somewhere you're intuitively good at doing that, but having the behavioral insights helps you get there quicker, I think. And that's one of the things that financial DNA does. But when you completed your financial DNA not that long ago, what did it bring out for you? What did you think about it? And for you personally.
Well, I think the first thing I was struck by is how accurate it was. That
Yeah.
it is. I know that you're an expert, but it's always surprising when you take something like that and you go, "Wow, that really, that really resonates." It's really pinpoints my learning style, how I interact with things, and as you said, as an advisor, that would have been super useful back in my advising days. One of the things I found is there were certain financial advisors that I liked working with is because usually their clients would be like that advisor. And it was probably like on your DNA report where it says, this, my style works best with these other styles. And I think that's the part that was so intriguing about the report is that how deep that it goes into those behaviors. I found it fascinating. It was a great experience doing the report.
And for our listeners' benefit, Tony is an initiator style, so pretty goal-driven in your own right, but importantly creative as well. So clients that fit your initiator style, match your initiator style, like me, that's easy for you to deal with and to adapt to. That's why for the 30 minutes before we started this conversation today, we could talk quite directly and problem solve. But I think also, Tony, one of the things that's very strong there in your DNA mapping, if you want to call it that, is your creativity. And so how have you been bringing that creativity to the fore in all your work over the last 30 years?
Well, I think the creativity also gets back to what we were talking about earlier, is that ability to think outside the box about how people are looking at their financial services and products and saying, okay, why are people still not any more financially literate today than they were 20 or 30 years ago when financial literacy became, a topic? People have known for decades that financial literacy is an issue in this country. So why hasn't it, with all the time and effort that's been thrown at the issue of financial literacy, why hasn't it helped Americans improve their financial literacy? And so, my thought was like, okay, well, what's missing here? And that's a creative part where you have to think outside the box and say, okay, well, how can we do this differently? And that's where I came up with the concept of, and why I was so excited to meet you is that, there's a psychological component to this of why people are connecting with the financial products and services is that they're not getting their wants addressed. They're not getting their goals addressed. And as you mentioned, you hit it up the nail on the head is people don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
And that the financial services industry does a very good job of saying, hey, we've got this product that we think is great for you, but it doesn't ask like, you can take a look at the prescription medications. Doctors, if you really want to make your doctor smile, come in and say, hey, I saw a commercial for this medication on TV. I think I need to start taking it. And your doctor will slap their head. And it's the same thing is because the doctor is diagnosing what the issue is and the best way to address it, while the advertisement is saying, this is a medication that you might need. And the financial services industry is just like that pharmaceutical company, where it's a financial planner using a tool like the DNA report is able to diagnose the issue that the client has.
Yeah, and I think if the advisor is prepared to be client first and really be on the client's side about what they want, and not just taking the fact the client doesn't know what they want as an opportunity to sell anything, that somewhat makes sense, but it's actually what the client wants, then that helps, and financial DNA can help in distilling that down. But I think there's another important piece here, and you wrote a book called Get Ready, and a lot of your mantra is about Tony, financial preparedness. And the way I understand it is if people went through your book, and you've got a longer book, it's not that hard it's not that hard to understand. I mean, it's simple, and it's got, fill the box in, and then you've got a simple workbook. But if people went through that, so you've made that very simple. So you've taken complexity and made it simple. To me, the reality is that by laying that out, a client can go through your book as a checklist and say, I've got this, I haven't got that. Okay, tell me about Z. And a decision can be made. And that in its own way is empowering the client. And so now we've taken this concept of financial literacy, which is in its own way, it's a good term, it's a holistic term, but it's abstract. And you've made a concrete reality out of it, because ideas have got to get taken out of the cloud and be put at street level for a consumer to understand. That's what, I think is your gift. But it's really hit me very hard that your book is it's a paper format, but we also have paperwork, which is an electronic format for the book, which is a brilliant thing about what paperwork can do and will be able to do in the future. But am I on the right track that really the book is helping people, the consumer, putting some power in the consumer's hand, which is empowerment, that they can then understand for themselves what they need to have or don't need to have? Am I
100%,
on the right track?
100%. And I think it benefits everybody. It also improves the experience for the financial services industry. I think that if people are financially literate and they're making informed choices, that they're going to stick with their financial advisor. There's going to be less churn in their funds or less policy lapses or whatever metric that you want to take a look at, is because people will have purchased the products that are the right ones for them instead of in a year going, I probably shouldn't have done this move, so I need to undo it. And then they leave the advisor. They take a surrender charge on an annuity, whatever it is that a lot of it is because they're not putting that financial literacy into action. And what we're trying to do with the app, what was so exciting for me to join Paperwork, is that I can take a book and, we're taking the book and we're making it into an app so people can access it on many different ways. But, we're calling it basically actionable financial literacy, is because, as you put it, is a missing piece has been how to put it into action, how to put that knowledge into action. And that's what we'd like to do, is to give people that ability to put their knowledge into action to keep the power, but also to, help financial advisors. And I know that's the same work that you do. If people truly understand their clients and the choices, and they're going to make product recommendations that help those clients out the most, and they're going to have the happiest clients and the easiest life.
You actually make me feel, and I didn't expect to be in this place myself personally, quite emotional right now. And I don't get to that place very often because I'm an initiator like you and very rational. But something's gone on for me here, because, and I think it's because our mutual why of self-empowerment is heavily triggered here, because I've always believed that if a client is more empowered, more knowledgeable, they're a better client. And that means they're better for themselves as the client. They're going to get further along and do better, but it's also better for the advisor. But not always advisors, and that's whether they're a wealth manager, broker, insurance agent, attorney, or the accountants often understand that. But in a way, the more equipped the client is, everybody is better off. And I think what you've done here,
100%.
yeah, that you are, and I think that's the power of what you've brought to the table for the advisors. The mature advisor who gets that should love Paperwork, should love Get Ready. I mean, it should be mandatory, put across the table. I think I told you when we first met, one of my first questions to every client was, have you got a will? And can I help you with the basic stuff? It wasn't about how much money you've got. It's just like, have you got the necessities sorted out? Well, if people went through Get Ready, they would see what they have, what they don't have, what they need, but they'd also understand. And I think for their advisors, have trouble communicating how complex and detailed the work that they do is. Well, the book's going to tell you, here's 100 and something pages of stuff that's potentially there. Well, that's demonstrating value, and advisors can help clients get that organized. And I think so, and this is more than an organizer. But that's why I'm very passionate, because I think passionate about this, because you put financial literacy into action, as you said. But as we sort of conclude on this, Tony, do you see that, if you want to say your identity, where you really stand out is the financial preparedness side of this? That's the strong point or that really it's financial literacy in action?
Well, I
they're
think
both related, but I think there's a slight that one might come before the other.
I would say the financial preparedness advocate, because it's action oriented. As you mentioned, financial literacy, it's a flat term. It's a very important term, but financial preparedness is, I think it gets back to something where people can say, oh, being prepared, I can relate to that. Being literate, people know that, but again, it's still starting to get down that track of being abstract.
Yeah. And, well, it's also, it could be abstract, but putting financial literacy into action in a way, which using Get Ready and paperwork, paperwork being the app, in a way are the tools to make that happen. Very important. But I think if you said your identity and where your emotional connection is, it's the financial preparedness advocate, because that's got empowerment all over it. And that also plays, I think, into your higher purpose. But, I think this is, to me, Tony, this is fantastic. And you're the man to do it. And I know you've got your own personal stories there with, with your mum, which is there in the book, and why everybody should do this, and the fact that people can be lost when someone passes away. And what do you do, whether you're a spouse, whether you're a son looking after your mother's affairs, or a daughter looking after your elderly mother's affairs, whoever you are out there, this is an absolute necessity. There aren't many things in the world really that are needs, but this is as close to it as, beyond food and water as there is, I think. So well done in bringing this to fruition, and the detailed work, because someone can look at it and say, okay, that's a book. It's more than the book. It's bringing a real experience that people need to go through to manage the next stage of their life. As you say, it's the financial first aid kit, and everybody needs to have it with them. So thank you, Tony. Is there anything you'd like to say as we conclude for our listeners?
I'd just like to say that, it's been an honor to be on here with you, Hugh, because your work is amazing. And I really appreciate your compliments on the work. This is really what I view as a culmination of everything I've learned in my career. I've thrown in all my experience and ideas and concept. It's a work of a lifetime. Hopefully it's a masterpiece. I may be biased on it, but the thing is as well that I think that resonates with me is that we do share that mission and that passion of changing the way that the financial services industry interacts with consumers, and that if we can change that, is then we can make a better experience for everyone. And as you point out, it makes an advisor's life a lot easier when you have satisfied clients, instead of having clients who call you up who are not happy every day.
Yeah.
That's a difference maker.
And I think for, where we both recently joined Females in Finance, it's a much needed collaboration in the industry. And, for Cheryl to put that together and get that going in the last 3 years is a fantastic initiative. And, particularly with so many women as financial advisors and becoming, inheritors, they control as much money, if not more, than the males, and live longer. It's a no-brainer. And I think what you've got is a no-brainer for that whole market segment. And I think we could really help them become the champions of their lives and in financial empowerment with the Get Ready book and paperwork. So I think we're off to a good start. And the more this percolates through my head, the more excited I am. So thank you, Tony, for spending time with me. And I look forward to more great conversations.
Myself as well, Hugh. Thanks for having me on today. It's been a pleasure.